Good morning, everyone, and
Good
welcome
morning.
to How to Stay Married
So far.
That's when they usually have stupid music, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then lots of really loud voices come on going, we're going to be, and that's really annoying. So we're not going to do that.
No, but what we are going to do actually is because we suddenly realised we've done thousands of these things. And I noticed somebody had left a comment the other day saying, are you on Instagram? How come we never said that? So I am at Nadia, Sawalha and Family on Instagram.
And I'm at Mark_Adderley, Adderley.
It's that L-E-Y. That's where it goes wrong.
A lot of people used to call me Alderley when I was a kid, and Aldersley.
Such an odd name. I do like it though.
Yeah, I think it's unusual.
Yeah.
It's different. And also if you're listening to this on iTunes, we are loving the number of people who are leaving comments, which we will then share to our Instagram accounts.
Not all of them, of course.
Well,
some of them.
I do, pretty much most of them, unless they're really horrible, which there aren't many. And we love it when you give us a score over there. So anyway, so whether you're listening or whether you're watching our ugly mugs, well, my ugly mug and that beautiful thing sitting opposite me, though she did do the most spectacular fart just
Mark!
before we started.
Why have you said that?
Well, we're going to get far more mucky than that in this one. So this podcast is a curious one. It's a curious one because, strangely, after however long we've been doing this podcast, I kind of had a little kind of furtive look up the list of subjects that we've done, and I thought, oh my God, we haven't done this. And yet I'd seen and heard on social media that you discussed this topic on Loose Women recently. And the topic is birthing, and especially in our case, home birthing.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we did. We talked about it on Loose Women on Friday. Actually,
Yeah.
we were talking
Oh right, was
about.
that recent? Sorry.
Yeah, we were talking about. Half of us were saying that we wanted. Well, actually, no, all of us. Actually, all four of us, I think, said that we wanted to know a lot more than we did when we went into labour. Now, I just want to put a disclaimer here right at the beginning that if you're one of those people that would prefer not to know, then don't listen to this podcast, because it's going to be a very honest podcast of what happened. There's a good and there's a positive and a not and quite a negative experience with both births here.
Yeah.
So you'll be getting both sides of it. But I think what's great about this is we're going to hear from a man's point of view as well, which again, we don't hear enough and often enough. Strangely, I was just reading through some of our previous podcasts and some of the comments, and I found a lovely comment from a man that was under our miscarriage podcast, and he literally asked, was it okay that he still felt the sadness and the loss because he was a man? It kind of broke my heart, really, that he could even ask that. So I'm really hoping that any men that listen would comment and let us answer back to you.
Well, I do think, and I do think it's interesting. When we did do that miscarriage chat, I did have quite a few correspondences with people on various platforms and in my life where they were saying, oh my God, we've never even thought of it from the perspective of a man. Not like it happens to the man too, i.e. the loss.
Awful, isn't it?
And we were talking to someone the other day who said that he'd had, with his partner, experienced several miscarriages. And I'll tell you what was odd about it, and I'm not going to go off on a tangent here, but it just reminds me of the importance of talking about the male experience of birth in general, was when he said it, something snagged in me whilst I was talking to him. And I realised how much I just paper over that feeling and emotion and sort of almost square it away as a bloke to think, because it didn't become a life, it's not something I should be, So anyway, so this will be quite an interesting conversation, because I don't think we've talked about it for a hell of a long time, actually, together.
No.
The experience of home birth.
No, and just birth anyway.
Yeah, well, maybe just to sort of as a starter for 10, obviously when we met, and I'll just quickly rattle through this, I'd had 2 children.
Yeah.
I was there for the birth of Izzy at the age of 23.
And a scale of 1 to 10, how traumatic was that at that age?
At that
as well,
age,
because we're so young. And how much did you know about what was going to
happen?
happen?
Didn't know anything. So in terms of the choices we were making, we had no clue whatsoever. It wasn't.
So how did you make the choices?
We kind of just thought there was a preordained structured way. The hospital, we slotted into the kind of tailwind, if you like, of a system that takes you to places. I mean, I remember words like doula coming up, not knowing what the fuck they meant. I remember,
and now I want to train as a doula.
Right, well there you go. And I remember things like, well obviously pain relief and all of that stuff coming up. And I remember, I think at the time I was that classic kind of bloke which was like, okay, hospital, as much pain relief as you can get. I know how I deal with this. I just jab as much as I could into me to get the thing out of me. But I do, it's funny you should say all that, because I do remember one decision made by the midwife at Lewisham Hospital when we had Izzy. And the decision that that midwife took was to dim the lights in the room. And I remember her saying this is a big deal.
Why was it a big deal?
Well, because doctors, like when they come in to sort of deliver the baby and everything, want it to be bright light. And I
That's
remember when
why
she
I didn't
said
want
that,
one in
that was
hospital.
the closest I came to thinking there was choice in how you had a
isn't that
baby. Was when she
interesting?
said, we're going to dim the lights, as if this was a remarkable gesture towards our comfort and what have you.
Wow.
Yeah.
That blows my mind,
Yeah.
because that tiny thing is where is
within that little...
is the seed that
Yes.
that through all my decisions about birth grow from.
Yeah, and just quickly, just to add as well, obviously there was Fleur came along 5 years later, and her mum didn't want me in the room with her, so I wasn't actually in there with her. But it was a very tough birth, it was a very difficult birth. I remember being very worried about that. And that was an interesting experience, because it's the only child that I wasn't in the room for. And that sense of helplessness and frustration and fear and worry and all of that sort of stuff, it was palpably more extreme because I couldn't be
You
in
weren't
there.
in there.
Yeah, absolutely. And
It's
I could
funny
hear
because
it. I could hear
I've
it
often
going on.
I've often said on Loose Women, and people always take sort of umbrage with it, that I wouldn't have forced you to go into the labour room if you didn't want to.
Right.
Because I think if somebody really, really knows that that's sort of the blood and the guts and all of that is not, you know, that they would find that very difficult. I don't necessarily think men should be forced into it. And they were like, well, we've got to go through the blood and guts. I said, I know, but I think somewhere that could affect a relationship. I don't know if somebody really, really didn't want to go in there.
I've just realised really panic-strickenly that I didn't check Nadia's shot, and it's the first time I haven't.
I'm in the shot.
It could be just your nose in shot, so I
No,
apologise.
I'm in the shot.
So, okay.
Do you want to come and check the shot so you feel more confident?
No, well, shall I go and check the shot? Why
If
don't
you're
you
wondering
check
what the
shot?
hell we're talking about, it's because we also put this podcast onto our YouTube
Oh my
channel.
God, you're miles away. That's awful. That's absolutely awful. Sorry, there's going to have to be... That's just the most diabolical framing.
Sorry.
No, don't you move. I've
God.
moved it. Oh my God. How many years have you worked in telly?
I thought it was all right. I didn't want it too close, to be honest. So I'm looking a bit rough. So there we go.
Sorry, listeners.
Sorry, listeners.
But that is a snapshot of, in two very different ways, the formality surrounding my experience of
I don't think we
childbirth.
should just do a snapshot, because we don't have the experience together of being in a hospital. What would just
No.
without because obviously we don't want to invade your partner at the time's privacy. Just from a totally male perspective, how did you find that the doctors and nurses treated you? Because I hear a lot about how they feel very left
here's the
out.
curious thing. I mean, some of the mitigating circumstances with Izzy's birth were, she was born, I mean, staggeringly, about as close to Christmas as you can get on the NHS.
Yeah.
So she was born on the 20th of December, so there was a distinct feeling that the hospital was at low marks.
Yeah.
And people were away.
Yeah,
You know,
and
it
that's
was a-
why the fact that Maddie's born on Christmas
Absolutely,
Day,
absolutely.
apparently it's so rare to be born on Christmas Day because they will manipulate
There's
it
so
so
much
that you're not.
controllability, isn't there, that they can nudge you and hold
Yeah.
you back and all that. What's it called when they instigate you?
Induce, instigate.
you. I mean, the thing I remember being most...
I love that. I was instigated.
Yeah. The thing I remember being most stressed about and focused on, bizarrely, was my bag of 50p pieces. Because I remember, I must have read a guide somewhere, but I remember the most vivid line of advice wasn't anything about...
No hot towels. Or...
No, it wasn't anything about that. Obviously, I was considerate to my partner and was wanting to, you know, obviously we were in love and I wanted it all to go well. I got fixated with having the right number of 50p's because, of course, this was pre-mobile phones. And I knew I had to phone people.
You love a practical
I
thing
love an
like that, don't
administrative
you?
task, and just like my nan.
Oh, I bet you were a nightmare with your
Yeah.
50p.
So I had I had all my 50p's, and then in the end, I can't remember who came. But the feeling of the hospital was so, because it was a low mast, it was very formal, but I don't think it wasn't a particularly horrendous experience. There was a complication. I don't want to break privacy or anything. There was a complication, rhesus negative blood and all that kind of stuff. So it got a little bit touch and go-y at the end, not for Izzy, but for her mum.
Yeah.
And so I know there was a sort of, you know, and it was an interesting and distressing moment because, of course, I was given Izzy, and I was just aware that it felt, you know, there was an urgency to the start.
But how were you treated? I want it from a male perspective.
Oh, just, well, because I was so young, I was just like, get over there, go over there, be over there. Have you got the 50p's? Yes. You know, they were so...
I'm totally...
I've got the 50p's.
This is me,
yeah.
this is
and
my moment.
I do remember at one point the midwife calling me over. I remember this very fondly, and my partner at the time, Izzy's mum, the midwife said, please come over, she needs to hit someone.
No,
yeah.
that's
so
hilarious.
I went over and she put, I mean, she was in, you know, she was going through a contraction.
We know,
she wasn't hitting me in a horrible way, but she was hitting me. And I said, okay, I can do that. I could do that. Thank you, 50p's, hit me. And she, you know, hammering into my... So I think the idea was that the father was a punch bag, a stress release, and a means of communication with the outside world. That was about it.
God, that's just so different from...
Yes, so that was my, you know, that was my... And then the other experience with Fleur was just standing in a corridor with a total disregard for me wanting to go in, and so I couldn't see, they didn't let me see the baby. It was bizarre. I mean, I was at the hospital for the
some
birth,
women
but
just don't want the man there, do they?
I didn't see Fleur's mum, and I didn't see Fleur.
God.
Bizarre.
Bizarre. I'd love to know more about that. But again, you know, it's there. We mustn't.
And I, you know, coming out of that experience, moving into other relationships, I think also after Fleur, I never envisaged I was going to have children again. So thoughts never went to what other choices are there in the world for child delivery.
And then you meet me.
Yeah.
I'm almost making hippie.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, exactly. I mean, I thought I was going to go down a helter-skelter of self-suicide through, you know, drink and drugs, and I was going to go that way. So I genuinely never, ever even had the smallest kernel of a thought that I would have any more children.
Really?
Absolutely. I wanted a family, but I thought it was beyond me. I'd made an absolute royal mess of it twice. I
didn't know that.
Oh God, yeah, no.
I didn't know that you didn't think you were going to have more children. I remember you saying quite a few times, I can't believe I'm married, I can't believe I'm married, I can't believe... And yeah, I didn't realise it was that deep.
It all just seemed so strange. I mean, that's why there's such a sort of magic, I think, to our relationship and the girls. Because for me, the shutters were coming down in so many different ways. God, how have we got here? But the shutters were coming down. I was actively pulling the shutters down through lifestyle choices and addiction choices and all that kind of stuff. Well, not choices, but, you know. And so, you know, scrolling back from the seriousness of what all that means, the last thing I was thinking about was, I wonder what choices there are in childbirth in the world. Yeah. Not at all. I'd had mine. First was all right. The second was... I'd say of the two, I feel the biggest disconnect and trouble with the second, with Fleur, because I felt so disconnected. And that upset me on many levels. But I don't want to go into all of that.
Yeah.
Too much detail.
So, then I came along.
Yeah, this strange woman who wore...
what would technically be known...
You wore bracelets on your ankles.
Yeah, and what is the technical term for somebody of my age? It's something...
Geriatric.
Yeah, it's a geriatric month.
mum.
They actually do call you, because I was 38 when I got pregnant with Maddie.
Yeah.
39 when I had her.
Wow, were you? So I was only 33, so I'm still quite a relatively young dad.
Yeah. 42 when I had Kiki.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I was only 37.
I mean, we are so blessed. Obviously, we had miscarriages in between, but I mean, what a blessing to be able to naturally have two babies at that age without any fertility treatment. I mean, I still can't actually believe that.
No.
And, you know,
So presumably were you well informed about childbirth choices?
It never occurred to me to have a baby in hospital. Just was never. I never.
You weren't born in a hospital, were you?
No, I was born at home, but it went very badly for my mum. The midwife was very unkind.
Oh.
It was awful. I had gone blue.
Oh.
She left me in the.
Well, that sounds like Maddie's birth.
Yeah. God, isn't that weird?
Isn't that weird? As you're describing it, I'm thinking, parallel. Isn't that funny?
Oh my God, I know, I'm freaking out.
That's a bit of a freaky one.
Oh my God, I've never thought of it. How come we've never made that connection?
Because you just haven't done it.
I just think it's so weird in life how we can be subconsciously fixing things that weren't right when we were children.
Isn't that bizarre? I mean, you've just described the same experience. If I was to give the headline sort of details.
Oh God, I wish my mum wasn't so shy. Wouldn't it be great to get my mum to tell her story?
Yeah, fascinating.
Because I just know that. I know that I was blue. I know that my mum was really scared I was going to... I don't know if she was scared I was going to die, but there was a lot of fear.
Right.
She said I was blue and then she just put me down and mum couldn't get to me. That was it. And it had been very traumatic, difficult birth. But strangely, it had never occurred to me for 1 minute that I would go into hospital to have my baby. I mean, my sister had had her first one in hospital because I think her partner at the time had insisted that she would have it in hospital.
Right.
But she had her second one at home. We use complementary medicine here. I mean, we use I would go to a doctor if I needed a doctor. I would have an operation if I needed an operation. Same with our children. But I do everything holistically. So I have homeopathy, osteopathy, recently acupuncture.
Anything else? Aromatherapy?
Aromatherapy. So we're much more natural household.
You are. Well, a case in point here is that's exactly what we are and Nadia is. And yet when I first met you, it was the one part of you that I thought was absolutely crackers. I mean... beyond crackers.
And yet now our homeopath is one of your closest friends.
Homeopath is one of my dearest friends, and I buy into an enormous amount of it, but I don't buy into it as much as I'd say you do. And I think there's a slight distinction there, but I think back in the day, as chats and conversations started to develop around how you were going to go into labour, the more and more crackpot they got, the more and more fearful I got. But maybe you should start to share what your thoughts were as soon as you got pregnant. Yeah,
so straight away, I was like going to have this home birth. I was going to have a water birth. And if I'm honest, I didn't really ever consider asking you what you thought.
No.
Because I did know that effectively, and disclaimer here, like a warning sign here, my first birth, I would describe it as myself as a survivor of torture. I'm not exaggerating. I wasn't prepared for it.
This is a nervous laugh.
Don't worry, because the second birth, where I did things very differly, it was a very positive experience.
And you had both, basically you had both extreme experiences.
I had both extreme experiences. So my sister was a huge influence on me, my big sister, who we were very, very close to. There's 2 years between us. And all the time through growing, and I refer to my sister a lot. She didn't know everything, but there's a lot that she knows that I don't know, and she's very much a big sister.
Yeah.
So, and she's very, very good on all health matters and all of that, and is a huge support. When anybody is ill in the family, and she was actually my birthing partner.
Yeah, even when I'm not ill, she's kind of useful in making me know that I might be ill.
So my sister and I decided that I was going to have a home birth. It was really nothing to do with you, and then we told you I was having a home birth.
Yeah.
Which now, if I went back and if somebody's listening and they're talking, I would say make that more an open discussion. If I was writing a letter to myself, I would say, you still got to make the choices for what you think is going to be right for you, because you are going to go through the most difficult thing that you are ever going to do in your life, for sure, if you're doing natural childbirth. But I think if I had my time again, I would just say, look, how do you feel about this? This is what I would really like to do. Whereas actually, I just didn't even consider it was anything to do with you, and I don't think that's fair.
Well, and it's funny as we're going there now, isn't it funny how these chats really do take you back in time? I do remember feeling particularly aggrieved, actually more aggrieved than I think I probably ever said, because we were kind of still in the honeymoon period. I felt very... I'll just say it how bluntly how I felt. This isn't, this was through the jaundiced eyes and heart of an addict as well. Let's not forget, I was an active, big drinker. And of course, at the point that you became pregnant, I'd lost my biggest drinking buddy.
Yeah.
And And so you were kind of becoming purer and cleaner, and clarity of mind, clarity of soul, clarity of spirit. I was becoming more and more Jack Daniels, you know, by the day. That's the dog eating someone's esophagus, by the way. And
a cow's esophagus, not someone's.
And I do remember feeling particularly aggrieved, though again, even back then, there was far less sort of chat about these kind of psychoanalytical thoughts and all that, you know, they meant, you know.
I mean,
but I felt really annoyed. I was really annoyed.
Yeah, there was no bad intention. And I would say if you're a man then, or maybe you should give the advice, to just say, the thing is, it doesn't have to be an argument. You can say, listen, I'm really excited. This is what I would say, my advice from a woman's point of view. If you're a man listening to this and you're feeling like it's all running out of you having any influence, is to say, listen, it's you and your body that's going to go through this. But I'd love to talk more with you and get more excited about what the plans are.
But I do think what happens around pregnancy is that there is a gathering of female spirits, always. Women pull to women, and it's like the men have done their bit. This happens in the most civilized, middle class, right on, you know, sort of.
But this happens everywhere. This happens at the beginning of time. Men are moved aside.
No, that's my point.
I would say that I think, don't forget, women are born for this.
No, absolutely.
And actually, if I'm really, really honest, I think I would go so far as to say that it's women that should hold the. That's why I have a dream of being a doula.
Yeah.
I would love to be a doula and support women in birth. I think. I mean, it was wonderful.
I'm just gonna have to let her out.
She's eating esophagus and it's very noisy. We never edit these, so this is why you're going to hear this bit. Go on, take it outside. Take it outside. Bad dog. Naughty dog. Out you go. There you go. She was really enjoying herself. Yeah, so, you know, so I think women... I think women are drawn to do that because women are drawn to do that. But the thing is, we're so far away from that and natural birth and going out into the field and birthing. And it is, you know, the majority of people will have it in a hospital and will have a very... So why should men be so excluded from it? Because we've gone away from that primal
Well, no,
way
but
of
I mean,
birthing.
I hear what you're saying, but maybe it is one of maybe men just have to grow up and just get on with it, you know, maybe it's the area where they do have to, but I do remember the time, it was less about you pulling together with women. I understand all of that, and I think men prefer it like that because we can't help in so many areas. Where I got frustrated was, of course, I was coming from a conventional health family. I was getting a lot of earache from my grandmother. I was getting a lot of earache from my mother.
She's old.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And they just thought you were absolutely some lunatic who was going to... She said, I remember my nan saying, well, she may as well go to Peru and have it on a mountain top for all the age she's going to have.
And yet, I do not regret it. No. I feel so... Both our children were born in this house. That's quite incredible. It's very rare. Yeah. It takes some real fucking guts to do it because everybody is telling you not to do it. That's the thing. It's hard.
That's what I was going to ask. Did you feel there was a huge swathe? So forget dealing with the
people always say to me, you're a maniac.
Right.
I mean, I was talking about this the other day. I was saying it's really weird, you know, like my polar opposite to this would be somebody that chooses to book a date and have a cesarean, have a major operation and have their baby taken out of the sunroof. That's how people do. For me, I find that, if I'm really honest, completely horrific to me as an idea.
What, scheduling in your birth?
Horrific. Yeah, you're having a major operation.
Some people have them because they have to have it. By
well, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about people, and I know quite a few who have booked in, who have paid the price, and they book in and they pay for a major operation to have their baby removed from their body.
In their Google Planner.
Right, but I would never say that to them. I just say, oh, okay. I would never say, oh my God, you're mad. But if you're a natural childbirther, people can say anything to you. I think it's rather like people that are naturally thin that say, God, it's all right for people to go, oh my God, you're so skinny. But you would never say anything about somebody if they were fat. You know, it's kind of analogous to that. Right. It's like you're allowed to say anything to a natural childbirther. Like any natural childbirther is a crazy hippie that, you know, that's made this decision because they just whacked out.
I remember, it's funny you should say all this, because I remember going back to a lot of the attitudes were ones of irresponsibility.
Irresponsible, all of this stuff, which people do say to you all the time. You know, and if you say, well, I didn't have any, well, what pain relief did I? Didn't have any, didn't have any pain relief. Oh my God. But if I said to someone, you had pain relief, you had an epidural, I would be called, I would shame them. But we're allowed to shame back at natural childbirthers and breastfeeders, and it's quite, is
it not born of the same prejudice that people have about anyone who tries to medicate themselves in a holistic manner? It's that sort of arched eyebrow, pernicious sort of...
I don't mind somebody having the opinion. I don't mind somebody saying, oh my God, that's really unusual. But I do think that there's a real disparity with that people are allowed to say to me, and always do, you nutcase. I would never say to someone they're a nutcase for booking in to have a cesarean or deciding to have an epidural, which is, you know, a big deal to have an epidural. Yeah, it's a big deal to have that put into your spine. I was never... The thing was, part of why I chose to have a home birth, there was lots of different reasons, but one of the reasons was I was really scared I might get tempted to have an epidural if I was in a hospital, and I was adamant that I wasn't going to have an epidural for all sorts of reasons. People can look that up themselves, but I had really researched that, and I had made the decision that that wasn't something that I wanted to do because I'd looked at the figures and all of this. So, and I knew, because it's really easy, I can go into a pub with absolutely 100, at this time, back then, I could go into a pub having made the decision that I wasn't gonna have a gin and tonic, and yet somebody could say, oh, go on, have a gin and tonic, and I'd go, yeah, all right. So I was really worried that I would be in hospital and someone would go on, have an epidural, and I'd go, yeah, okay. Sorry, that was a bit muddled, but you stuck with me there. So I wanted to protect myself from going down the drug route. Right.
Was that your primary reason?
Ask people how many books I read about childbirth. I had a pile of books.
You were reading them as you were in the birthing pool.
Yeah. So every decision I made was an informed decision. I never wanted to be induced, because for me, and this is again the research that I'd done, once you go into that, you know, there's a whole set of circumstances that will often happen after you've been induced. So as long as the baby was fine, I was prepared to go to however many weeks. In France, you can go up to 42 weeks. So, you know, fingernails are growing long and all of that. I would have done all of that.
Give birth to a teenager.
The longer a baby's in there, the heavier the heart. And of course, I was having all my checkups with my midwife. But I didn't want to be induced because I'd got impatient with being pregnant, or because people were trying to hurry me along. So every decision I made was because I wanted a natural childbirth, and I wanted the baby to be as strong and healthy as possible.
It's weird going back to the narrative running up to the actual birth itself, because I'm reminded of how judged you were. Because of course I was doing part of the judging quietly, not from a horrible sense.
No, but I think it's intention. I think you were worried about me, and you were worried about the baby.
And I think and I think the role of the father is one of having the 50Ps, doing the practical shit, checking the motor's okay, the engine's okay to do a long distance drive, and if the engine is not even in the car, but it's on the road or in your bedroom, you're like, I need the rest of the vehicle here to make this journey safe. You know, and I felt that all the key constituent elements were there. There did come a point though where I'd use the analogy of, you know, those snakes that have sort of like a long snake that wiggles, waggles. It felt like that was as that got longer and longer and we were getting closer and closer, I realised all choice, any influence I could have on it went out the window.
Well, it was very, very difficult, because a few weeks before I gave birth, an acquaintance, not a friend, somebody that I just knew in this area, not far from where we live, had a home birth and lost the baby.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, well, we didn't want to tell you because we were worried about you.
Oh my God.
Yeah, yeah. Her partner since wrote a book about it, actually.
Really?
Yeah. And that was a very scary time for me. But I was just so determined.
See, if I'd have known that, I would have doubled down on some kind of...
I knew myself, and I knew that if I was in a hospital, these are some of the things that I didn't want to happen that would happen in a hospital. Things that I'd heard. I didn't want a changing shift of different people coming in. I'm very shy physically. I wanted to be able to just birth and just be going, and just like, not be like, who else is coming in here? I don't really, I very, very controversial belief, and I know loads of people are going to go crazy at me. I don't like male gynecologists. I just don't. I think it's weird.
I think it's weird too.
I don't like male gynecologists, and I didn't want to, every time I've had a smear, I've insisted on a woman. I didn't want a man looking up my nun. I wanted to make my choices about who was here for the most important thing that was ever going to happen in my life. I wanted to choose who was going to be in the room. And on that note, I chose a midwife that came very, very highly recommended, an independent midwife. I had to have an independent midwife to be able to have my home birth because of my age. I couldn't just use... and it's very difficult with the independent home birth. You don't get insurance, all kinds of... It's quite a big thing to have an independent home birth. But you're going to get somebody that is very much into natural childbirth. Now, unfortunately, that midwife couldn't do it, and she changed me over to a midwife.
Right. I remember.
And this is one of my big regrets. Now, this midwife is probably a wonderful midwife with other midwives, but if I'm absolutely honest, and this is what breaks my heart when I talk about my birth, because part of the reason why I wanted to home birth was I really, really wanted to choose who was there. And right when I first met her, I didn't like her. I didn't connect with her. Not her fault, but I just, you know, when you have that human connection, and I didn't have it. And honest to God, it's taught me a life lesson, that, because I was like, after everything that went wrong with that birth, I was like, I'm going to be more brutally honest in my life, because I should have said on that day, she's not right for me. And I couldn't, because I didn't want to hurt her feelings. So because I didn't want to hurt her feelings,
you were people
I had the wrong person in the room for me. I was people pleasing. I was TV presenting. I was a TV presenter. Oh, hi, yeah. Oh, God, it's great. And I was like, I don't like her. I don't like her. Oh, my God.
Oh, sweetheart. Oh, sweetie. Mug.
You can just take me right back there, right now. No, no, don't get up. I'm all right, don't get up.
And then if you add...
Just give me 1 minute.
Yeah, no, I'm just going to say that...
I didn't like her.
Yeah.
And again, this is why... Even though that birth, and I think we're probably going to have to do 2 podcasts on this, my next birth is such an amazing story, because I learnt the lessons from my first birth. And that, I mean, in a way it's weird, because even though it went wrong, the home birth, it still was the right decision, but I made the wrong decisions within the run up to it, because it proved to me I had the wrong person in the room. So if I'd been in a hospital, and honestly, from women that I've spoken to, and because I've interviewed a lot of women. When I was doing my show, City Hospital, I've literally spoken to dozens and dozens of women about their birth. And so often, they haven't liked the person that's been there looking after them, birthing them. Of course, people have amazing experiences where they have the best midwife, and those midwives are them. So I have such huge respect for midwives. I think midwives have been taken over a lot by you know, the doctors, and I think they've lost a lot of those skills, those incredible skills that midwives have to turn a baby inside you, all those amazing
Well, it's
things.
funny, but I wouldn't say, you don't be so hard on yourself. You've made a lot of the right decisions. I mean, you were in an invidious position, really. You knew you wanted to do this. One of the things that helped me, again, in a very practical male way, was you were reading all the books, you were talking to all the people, you were taking the advice. I remember talking to myself with a radical unbirther in America, and we weren't going that extreme.
No, they are people that birth completely on their own with nobody in the room.
Without anyone in the room. But I was having a really compelling and interesting and investigative chat with this woman in the States, who's the leading proponent. Sorry, her name escapes me at the moment.
Do you remember when I talked to the woman who was blind?
Yes.
And had to have home birthed one baby on her own, and was having her second baby with not a single person with her.
Yeah. I mean, radical, but I mean, that's
radical. That's not for me. It's illegal in this country.
One thing it did tell me was, I'm pleased we're not doing that. It suddenly made choices we were making seem quite sort of medicaled up, and like we were medicaled up to the hill. But within all of that, you were making the right choices. I do think it just went awry towards the end because of a personnel problem, but it was the key personnel involved, really. But also compounding the problem, and this can't be underestimated, was the ticking clock of Christmas, which was a huge spectre over the very night. Well, night, it was 2 nights. You were in labour for, you know, I mean, in a sense, where we're at, we've almost done the build-up to labour, and you feel you could do labour in an entirely different chat.
I think we'll have to do labour, because well, I think we'll have to do the labour in a different chat. But what I would say is, so mistake 1 was that I didn't get the connection. Mistake number 1 was, the reason I wanted a home birth, one of the main reasons was I wanted the choice of who was in the room with me at the most magical, special
I think
thing.
you had that choice up until quite late in, didn't you?
Yeah.
And then it changed.
Yeah, and then it changed. So that was my mistake number 1. My mistake number 2 was...
Birthing pool?
No, that's another one. Was that I had signed up for an incredibly intense antenatal course, to which I only went to 2 of, and I had signed up for birthing yoga, to which I only went to 1 of.
Antenatal being...
You know, the
afterwards.
classes. The
anti is prenatal.
So prenatal.
Right.
No, they're called antenatal classes.
Are they?
And postnatal.
Oh.
Yeah. Antenatal is before.
Oh, right.
And yes, but in my head, I'd gone to them. Right? So I'd done yoga, I'd done my full antenatal course, but all I'd done was pay for them. But I hadn't actually
Just
gone
like you
to
do
them.
with yoga now.
But I had read and read and read and read and read about everything, but I hadn't actually done it. But in my head, I had better, very much better birth with the second birth when I actually went to these things. Also, I worked up till the last minute, and I was filming Passport to the Sun, and I was travelling abroad, and I was doing 12-hour days, and I was totally exhausted by the time it came to going into labour. If there is any way you can afford to have time off before you go, a proper time off, and you don't spend that time decorating your house, emptying the loft, doing all that sort of stuff, that would be my greatest bit of advice. Walk, swim, exercise, but rest. You are going to, it's not called labour for no reason. And so I was an older mum, I was exhausted, I hadn't prepared in the way that in the way that I did for my second baby, and I wasn't happy with the person that was in the room with me.
And I wasn't happy that there was 3 gallons of water, no more than that, 3 tons of water in our kitchen.
Yeah. Next big mistake was I had decided that water, because I'm a complete water baby, I love to be by water, like nothing would make me happy.
Where we're
to have a
sitting now
swimming
is
pool.
where the waterfall was, right here. You're in the
Yeah,
middle
right
of it.
here, right this exact spot. So I love the sea, I love to be by the sea. If I'm sad, if I'm lonely, if I'm happy, whatever, a bath makes everything better.
We brought the sea to Nadia.
So I just assumed, and I put too big a thing on this, I built this up in my head too much, that the water was going to sort out everything, was going to soothe everything. And I put too much on that psychologically. So when that didn't happen, when it didn't go that way, it was such a crushing, massive disappointment. Psychologically, it was a huge, huge problem in my birth. But I really think that we should do this. I think we need to start another podcast for that.
So do you think, we should do a blow-by-blow account of the first birth, really? Because it was an incredibly long one.
Yes.
Incredibly long.
So I think let's take it up to here. And anything up to this point that you would think from the male's point of view, like when I was reading and not doing antenatal. You came to one antenatal class, but then you didn't come to any more.
Probably because I was busy. I mean,
yeah, you were
working.
both incredibly busy. So do you have regret about that?
Yes, I have regret, but I think I probably was underplaying because we were so early. I think how early we were in our relationship was a huge contingent part of this. I do remember at times thinking, oh Christ, she was a woman of a certain, this was my paranoia moment, she's a woman of a certain age, she just wants a baby, it doesn't really matter who I am, and I'm just superfluous to the entire situation. No, these are the thoughts that men have sometimes, that they're just kind of...
I can't believe you thought that of me.
No, but I was thinking it in a jaundiced, damaged...
Hang on a minute. Hang on a minute. You are not going to just go off into jaundice
I have
damage.
so many terrible thoughts that are just, you will always say, oh, that's ridiculous. Well, it was one of those thoughts, but because
that's so sad. That makes me sad. That makes me
very outside of things.
That leaves me feeling
sorry,
sad
I don't
that you felt like that, because I had the opportunity to have babies with everybody that I went out with, wanted to get married and wanted to have babies. So that's just not the case.
And it was compounded in, I keep stressing, listener and viewer, in my jaundiced, no one's fully confident at the beginning of a relationship.
Yeah, I get that.
We were making earth-shatteringly enormous decisions. We decided to have a baby, we were married, it was all happening very quickly. And I think we often joke about the speed with which and the whirlwind.
I suppose I would have thought that if I'd been a bloke.
But another part of me, because your sister became so involved with it, because your family was so important to you, I felt very much like a satellite on the outside of a swirling solar system that had its own, your dad, everything about it was
very tribal,
self-sufficient. And I literally felt like Pluto, and probably looked like Pluto from the Disney films, going around the very edges. And I would talk to my friends, I'd get quite drunk, I would be talking about the choices you'd made. They'd ask follow-up questions like, is that right? And I wouldn't know what to say. I'd say, it seems mad. Yeah,
I mean, the thing is, I'd say what I regret is that I wish that maybe I'd said to you, read this, look at that, because you were on the edge of it. And I think it would have been better for both of us if you had been, I think your fear, just like, I don't want to know anything about it. But I think actually if you read all the stuff about what natural childbirth is, you might have got, this is all with hindsight, you might have got quite excited about it.
Might have done. But
the second one's a great story. The second one is a great story.
Well, we've got to tell you about the first one, but that's for another time.
Okay, there we go.
You're right, sweetie. I know it was a very emotional chat.
Yeah, God. What's wrong with me? No, I'm fine.
Okay, guys, leave us your comments. This might resonate for a number of people, and do share with us, and we'll take time to have a read.
And if you're watching this on YouTube, hit the subscribe button, but also hit the notification bell, because we very often do surprise lives and all sorts of things on this channel. And if you haven't hit that bell, you won't know, because YouTube won't notify you.
Bye, guys.
Bye.